We're excited to have Adam Jones from Tempe with us today. Adam's 15 plus years of parking operations experience, along with his 6 plus years of downtown parking and operation management, give him a unique perspective on optimizing downtown parking environments and maximizing returns and customer satisfaction for municipalities and property owners. He has extensive experience in on-street parking management and enforcement, off-street parking management, including municipal operations, sports stadiums, convention centers, hotels, entertainment districts, and Class A office buildings. Adam is also familiar with turning around underperforming operations and development of new parking locations. And today I'll be moderating and also talking about some of our data.
Downtown Tempe Authority is what is termed as an enhanced services district, and in many parts of the country that's also called a business improvement district. One of the items that we are tasked with here is management of the City of Tempe's on-street and off-street parking assets. We also do something a little different from other organizations. We also function as a commercial operator, going after marketing and managing parking assets of private property owners too. Our downtown area here is relatively small but busy. Right in our immediate downtown area, we have roughly just under 1,000 on-street spaces, a growing Class A office and residential footprint, and we abut next to the nation's largest urban campus, Arizona State University. So all of that together can sometimes present some unique challenges with regard to user groups and making sure that we're maximizing the availability and use of each and every space that we have. The goals as we look to partner with Smarking was to basically just improve downtown. We're trying to make sure that I always like to say is the less you talk about parking, the better parking runs, because typically, as you all well know, that anytime parking is brought up, it's many times in a negative light. And as much as I can take parking out of the conversation, the better. So we're looking at just trying to utilize the space and the spaces that we have in the best possible manner, making sure that the folks that want to use the space can get access and use them. We're landlocked. In downtown Tempe, we don't have any more space to build on. We don't have ways really at this point in time to add parking, and especially on-street parking. So we need to work with the various technologies out there to make it as easy as possible for visitors to find parking, whether it's on-street or off-street. One of the things that our organization does, which I think is quite unique and is a good, unique selling proposition that we give to our clients, is that any monies that we make off of a management fee, and let me stress that, we only get a management fee for what we manage. The revenues for the parking that the City of Tempe owns goes to the City of Tempe. So the management fees that we get for managing gets reinvested back into downtown, and that could be through various beautification, clean and safe initiatives. It could be marketing, special events, many different things that we do. So we also work very closely with the local transit authority. We operate a trolley system downtown to try to encourage people to take the trolley versus getting in their car and driving just a short distance. We have light rail stops in the downtown that connect to both Phoenix and Mesa. And then we're also in the planning stages, and hopefully we'll launch construction next year of a modern streetcar, which will also give us another opportunity to grow the many modals of transportation that we have.
Awesome. So Adam is going to tell us a lot about a really cool story enacting variable pricing. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to go back a little bit and tell everyone about our webinar series. We started this series at the beginning of the summer, and so far we've heard some really great stories from the city of New Haven and the city of Grand Rapids. Overall, it's to tell stories of different cities doing really innovative things, using data to manage their parking in order to inspire other cities around the country and around the world. So before we jump into his story, looking at mapping, as a huge parking nerd, I couldn't ignore some of the other cool things about the parking data in Tempe. So if you look here, this is a graph of total occupancy in Tempe. This is paid occupancy based on meter and mobile payments. And it's from January 2015 through the end of December 2015. And the total blue line is the number, the daily peaks for how many people are paying for parking every day. And here you can see how influenced the downtown area is by ASU campus and by the students there. And not only just influence, but the influence is even greater when you look at the park mobile payments. That green line on the bottom, you can see the park mobile payments are almost about 20% of total payments, but you can point out, without knowing anything about school schedules, exactly what the school schedules are in this area. I know that the second week of March is spring break because all of a sudden mobile payments just dramatically decrease. I know that somewhere mid-January is when classes start and when winter break. So I think that's really cool when you can see these trends very clearly and obvious like this. We can also look at occupancy in different neighborhoods. Altogether, if we look at all the on-street metered areas in Tempe, at 1 p.m., we get very high occupancy of 90%. For all these spaces aggregated, that's very popular area. But this percentage varies across neighborhoods. And not only does it vary in the peak period, but there are multiple peak periods, and this peak period isn't necessarily the same across all neighborhoods. So you see on the right, we have a picture of an example Friday in the Center Point neighborhood, and this is daily occupancy. And you can see that there are actually several peak periods. You see occupancy is high around the noontime, lunchtime peak, and then it drops in the middle of the day, and it gets high again around 5 p.m., but then it drops a tiny bit, and the real peak is during 8 or 9 p.m. This is a Friday night, so people are going out in this area. And that's very unique. If I was to say what's the typical on-street peak periods, typically around 12 p.m. or 1 p.m., but different neighborhoods have unique occupancy. So you can really view trends over time of day and locational. And this locational analysis is really what intrigued Adam with some of his goals. So I'll give back to him and let him talk about how he addressed some of those.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. I'd like to go back just a little bit and give you guys a little bit of history as to where we were and how we got to where we are now and the direction we're getting ready to go. Several years ago, the metered spaces in our downtown area only went to 6 p.m. And I started looking at comments and complaints that would come in, and many of the complaints that I got were involving people just saying, hey, I come down there and I'm never able to find a space on the street in the evenings at any time. They're occupied. So one of the things I did, and I know I would have to have my ducks in a row before I went to the city and asked for anything, was I started doing license plate inventories just to see what the length of stay is and the frequency. And what I determined is that the spaces were pretty much utilized by employees that were working in the downtown retail and restaurant establishments that did typically have parking assigned to them in an off-street location. But if it's free on the street, they opted to park closer to where they were working. And I totally get that. So I was able to go to the city and convince them that we would be better served by extending the enforcement times of the meters in certain areas until 10 p.m. We did that about the same time that we went with smart meters and in-ground sensors, and the results were just phenomenal. And we were also seeing that we were getting about that 15% vacancy per block face, which is the desired vacancy you want to be at in an ideal setting. So that's pretty much been the way things have been for a while now. What we were looking at now is we did have one section of downtown that was very underutilized. In addition, we knew that as the business downtown had grown, that we really needed to look at two things. One, an area that was underutilized and see what we could do there. And then also we needed to change the rest of downtown until 10 p.m. So we've been exploring demand-based pricing, dynamic pricing, however you want to call it. And my recommendations initially were to go to the city and say, hey, here's a situation where we think we can lower the rate over here and hopefully spur demand. And then here is where we're getting a lot of usage at night where we should be able to capitalize on it because it's the same car sitting there. And that's all I was hoping to get out of this. But I probably fast-forwarded it here a little bit, Kelly, and I apologize for that. But if you look at the graph that's up now, that was one of the graphs that was presented in this presentation to the city. And one of the comments I got back was, which was kind of surprising to me because I wasn't asking for this, is, hey, it looks like Mill Avenue is almost at 100% all the time. Why don't we look at raising the rate there? And I'm like, wow, I wasn't expecting that, nor was I going to ask for that. But yeah, that's a very good point. So what's really important to show here is that visuals are paramount, and this visual shows a pronounced issue here on the Mill Avenue corridor, which Mill Avenue is our primary thoroughfare in downtown. So it's what like the graph here says, or the presentation says, I just got more than I asked for there, which was surprising, but it was the right thing to do. But I know that parking, especially pricing, is very contentious sometimes in conversations, especially with businesses. And that was not something I was prepared to ask for until I had more data to go by, and then more successes to report back based on the recommendations that we were going to make. So like I said, we just got more than what we asked for here, and these changes, just so you know, are going into effect August 15th, right before the ASU semester starts. So I think it's important to get those changes in effect before students come here, so we've got consistency and no changes midstream.
So if anyone has any questions, they can go ahead and type them in. One of the questions that I've been asked a lot working with different cities are how do you market your mobile payments, and what are the methods that you do to increase adoption of that?
That's a great question. And one of the things that I've noticed here, well, first of all, your mobile adoption rate's not going to be as high if you already accept credit cards at the point of sale, which we do accept. All of our on-street meters are credit card enabled. And what we've done in the past, and where we see greater adoption rates, is we have ambassadors out on the street, and our parking compliance personnel are out on the street, and we equip them with marketing collateral that they can distribute that shows people how to download the app and how to use it. And we see that the closer we get to campus, the greater the adoption rate is. And like you mentioned before, Kelly, when school is in, we see that the mobile payment through Park Mobile usage is much higher than it is when school is out. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that if we, by chance, did not offer credit card enabled meters, I would assume, just a quick guess, guess, I would say that we'd probably be around 65 to 70% of all of our transactions would be done on the mobile app, because right now we're probably showing about a 68% credit card usage versus coin currently, and that's quite high. And like I said, that goes up higher as you get closer to campus, and it drops down as you get further away from campus. So there is a direct correlation there between campus parking, because I think they embrace the technology. The students, that is, they embrace the technology more so, and they like to use it, and it's a consistent thing for them. And it's good. So I mean, I'd like to see that to continue. And as we look forward, as we continue to evaluate all these changes, when we look to expanding to other streets that in neighborhoods that do not currently have on-street metered parking, we may look to just incorporate mobile payments only and not even invest in the infrastructure, depending on the location of the neighborhood, because we're seeing that the adoption rate in those areas would be so high that it's not far-fetched to believe that we could get along without the meter infrastructure itself. And I know that is occurring in other cities.
Yep, definitely. There's definitely precedents for that happening in several other cities that I know about. I think it's a great idea. Another question for you, Adam. As variable pricing gets enacted, how will you let parkers know kind of what pricing is where?
We do, as being the Enhanced Services District that does a lot of marketing and promotions, we will do our very best to get the information out on social media. It'll be on our websites. It will be distributed. The meters themselves, one of the things that I changed years ago, and I noticed from going to city to city to city, I'm surprised at how little signage that you actually see on the on-street meters. And what I adopted a while back was a color-coded schematics for the downtown, and then on the street side of the meter. So when you pull up to the meter, you can see right before you ever get out of your car how late payment is required. So if it's till 10 p.m., and it's in our purple zone, that means payment is till 10 p.m. It's $2 an hour, and there's a 2-hour limit. They know that right away before they even get out of their car. So it's just communication is paramount. And also, what we typically do every time that we do some sort of change, we get the communication out a month in advance, and even a month to 2 months into it, where we know the change has happened, such as maybe going from a 6 p.m. Enforcement time until a 10 p.m. We'll issue courtesy notices instead of citations, which I think goes over a lot better. And I've seen in the past where we've issued 3,000-4,000 courtesy notices in 1 month, which obviously that reduces the enforcement revenue, but that's not our goal. Our goal is not to increase enforcement revenue. And I tell our constituents all the time that every time that I can get the on-street meter revenue to go up, it's sort of like a teeter-totter effect. The enforcement revenue will decline. And the fewer tickets that we write, the better from a compliance standpoint downtown, because it tells you that people aren't confused. And the worst thing that can happen is people get confused, they don't know what to do, then they get a ticket, and then the next thing you know, they may complain, they may not, but I can tell you this much, they probably won't come back. And our goal is to keep them coming back downtown. And like I said before, and I can't stress this enough, the less they have to think about parking, the better.
Awesome. Okay, we're getting a lot more questions in right now. Let's see if we can get through some of them. First question is, what are your hourly rates? How many meters do you have, and how large is your enforcement staff?
Okay. Well, right in the immediate downtown where the changes are happening, we have roughly right at 600 meter spaces. We have more outside of downtown that I don't really include in this, but we have 600 metered spaces. We have 4 different zones, if you will. We have one zone, which is the least utilized, which will be going to $1 per hour with a 3-hour max, with a 6 p.m. end time. And then we have two other zones, well, I should say three other zones. One, which is on Mill Avenue, which is our purple zone. That's $2 an hour, enforcement till 10 p.m. with a 2-hour time limit. And then we have our green zone, which is $1.50 per hour with a 3-hour limit. We have 4 full-time parking compliant staff, and you might notice that I know I'm not the first to utilize this, but I think it's really good way to approach enforcement is we don't call them enforcement officers, we call them parking compliance. And our main approach is anytime we have an opportunity to educate versus ticket, we want to take that. And you, I'm sure everyone knows on here, you don't always have that opportunity, but we try to approach that in every instance. If we can help somebody with it, information or education, we're going to do that first and foremost and worry about a ticket later.
Awesome. And do you use LPR technology?
We did, and that was taken away by the that was given back to the police department. They were to focus more on trying to retrieve stolen cars, but we are looking to add that back into the fold next year.
Mm-hmm. And the other part of this question I can answer. The occupancy graphs are graphs based on paid occupancy data, so not sensor data or LPR data. It's simply paid occupancy from the meters and the mobile payments. Therefore, it's very low cost and easy to do way to evaluate trends.
Yes, it is.
Were any other factors used to evaluate underutilized areas in that area that was underutilized? Did you look at elevation, sidewalk conditions, or those kind of factors as well?
No, all of our sidewalks, all of that's in great condition downtown. I think that, it's all about perception, and people's perception becomes a reality. And what I find is that we're in a very unique situation here in what we call the Valley of the Sun. We're sandwiched between multiple cities. We have Phoenix, which is our big brother, just to the west, and we have Scottsdale to the north, Mesa to the east, Chandler and Gilbert to the south. Now, out of all these cities, and some of these cities are quite large. I mean, Scottsdale, which is probably 500,000 people now. Many of those cities don't charge for parking in their downtown. Phoenix does, and we do, but Scottsdale, Mesa, Chandler, and Gilbert elect not to. And what we find is that people will complain and say something to the effect of like, oh, I don't go down there, parking's always such a pain, or parking's always a problem. And what I always try to drill down to, just to for my own sanity and to try to educate people as much as possible, is parking's not a problem. What it always boils down to is parking is not free. And we do a ton of transactions every month, and the vast majority of the people that come down here are not concerned about free parking. They're concerned about available parking and convenient parking. So we have options for those that do not want to pay for the higher demand-based pricing. We have, like I said, the lower off-street parking or on-street parking just to the west of downtown, which is $1 per hour and free after 6 p.m. We also have two city-owned garages that flank downtown, one to the east and one to the west, that offers free parking after 6 p.m. and every weekend. And those get taken advantage of somewhat, but we feel that the spaces that are in the prime areas, people don't mind to pay provided they're available and easy to understand, and they know what to do. So that's how we try to approach it. And there's some areas, no matter what we do right now, I probably even if we make them free, will not get utilized that much because people just elect or don't want to walk that far, and we're only talking maybe a couple of blocks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. One more question. You mentioned that you have 2-hour zones and 3-hour zones. What made you decide to change one zone to a 3-hour zone instead of 2 hours?
No, that's a great question. The 2-hour zones are in places where we have businesses, a lot of businesses present that rely on turnover traffic. And being that we abut Arizona State University, we want to encourage more turnover in those 2-hour zones, and we don't want students sitting there for a 3-hour period taking those spaces up. On our more outlying areas, and I shouldn't say outlying, they're closer to the university, and there may be less businesses right there to depend on the turnover. We've gone to 3-hour limits there because our occupancy studies have shown that that's the sweet spot, if you will, on what our time limit should be. So it's just based on where we need to encourage turnover versus where we don't need to.
As you can hear, Adam is a very full source of information, and this only scrapes the surface of his years and years of experience managing parking. So we want parking professionals to share their experiences and their knowledge. If you have any feedback or suggestions, please contact me directly. Also, if you want to request a free parking analysis report, if you have data that you're interested in looking at, you can contact me directly. And we try to put all these stories, including recordings of the webinar, on our blog so that you can read case studies, kind of what other cities do, what they're doing, what they're studying, what they're looking at up there on our blog. And again, feel free to reach out with any questions, and I'll follow up after the webinar with a recording and a link to the case study about Tempe. And thank you again, Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Very enjoyable.